Greetings. Well, I've had an awful lot of questions lately about vanilla orchids. Now that the world price of vanilla has gone up to $500 a kilo, there's a lot of folks getting interested in this plant. First thing to know about vanilla, it's an orchid. Second thing, it has no pollinators here in Hawaii or in most places in the planet except for southern Mexico. And so if you grow vanilla, you're going to have to do it by hand, the pollination. Okay. The other thing to know is that it's an epiphyte. This grows on trees. As you can see here behind me, I've got it dangling all over a coffee plant. So I'm going to get myself a cutting right here, like that, and show you how to get it in a pot. Okay, we have our cutting. Next thing to know about vanilla, the sap is acrid. Don't get it on your skin. If you are sensitive to things like that, you might want to wear gloves while handling the plants. Myself, I just wash it off if I get it on me. I'm not that sensitive to it, but it can burn skin. Okay. The other thing to know is always know which way is up on your cutting. You want the tips up and the ground end down. It really doesn't matter what kind of plant you're putting into a pot. Make sure you know which way was up. Okay. I know in this case, this is the bottom here. And so, in this pot right here, I have pine bark. You can use a lot of different mediums for orchids. You could use coconut coir would work, perlite works, lava rocks would work. There's a lot of different things. Basically, just make sure it's inert, sterile, and non-soil-like, because these are not soil-growing plants. They're epiphytes. They grow in trees, and if you try to put them in soil, they're probably going to rot away and die. So I'm going to place my cutting here in this container, along with its other 5 buddies that have already been done. Here I have a nice scoop full of pine bark. Pour enough of it down around the cutting so we will nest it in well. Then I'm going to add a little bit of a time-release fertilizer, approximately a teaspoonful of it into the pot here. Now you're going to ask me, so I'm going to tell you this is triple 13 Osmocote. You could use Nutricote, you could use Osmocote, you could use organic fertilizers. Just don't use rapid release type fertilizers. These orchids don't like that. They really don't like fertilizers that got a high urea content either. So something mild and a little bit. Doesn't need a lot of food. Well, now that I've got them all potted, I have moved them outside into my shade table. It's going to take them probably about 3 to 6 weeks, depending, in order to produce a decent root system inside the pot. So I'm going to give them about a month out here before I take them to the field. Just another note on the mediums that we're using. Again, orchids are not soil dwellers. At least this variety is not a soil dweller. It dwells on a tree trunk. And so the pine bark that's being used in the pot, or the coconut coir, or whatever you've got, it is only there to hold the plant in place. The planting is pretty simple. As you can see here, this is a coffee tree. I have stripped the branches on the lower portion because I'm going to use this coffee as a vanilla trellis rather than a coffee plant. Vanilla and coffee seem to have an affinity for one another. The orchids seem to like climbing in coffee trees. They also seem to like climbing on cacao. Tom Sharkey uses cacao plants for this. So what I've done here is I've cleaned up the weeds at ground level at the base of the plant. I went through with a flamer and I burned the weeds that were down there. Then I took a piece of cardboard right here and I took a finished potted vanilla orchid that was rooted for about 6 weeks or so, set it at the base of the tree on top of the cardboard, and then took the vine and kind of twined it in between the trunks. The point of this whole process being that the vanilla is just in the pot to get it in position for hanging it on the tree. Okay. Now, I know my friend Tom Sharkey just takes the vines and literally just drops them in his trees. I believe that if I put a little bit of fertilizer in this container, I can get my vines to take off quicker. And so that's why I'm doing it this way. So yesterday I came out here and I prepared site for a whole bunch of orchids. We have one here. I have one over there. I have one right here. Got another one there. Another one right here. And another one right there. So for the overview, here's what this looks like. We're in my front yard. I have cut down a bunch of coffee out here to use for dragon fruit, but then I reserved a bunch of the coffee to use as shade and support for my vanilla orchids. And so we're going to be sticking orchids at the base of almost every coffee tree in this front yard. Well, if we look underneath the plant here, where I've got an old vanilla orchid, if you look back here, you can see the roots that are trailing down the trunk of the coffee. They're entering the ground. There are also air roots, like this one right here, that has come down from the vines up in the plant, and they're producing roots into the soil too. As I said, this is not a soil-dwelling orchid, but it will grow roots into the soil. What I've found is the stems will rot if they're put in soil, and the epiphytic roots, the ones growing up in the top of the tree, don't like soil much either. But I've found that once it's in the plant and it starts to send roots down to ground level, those roots seem to be able to be adaptable to soil when they hit it. They actually change from an epiphytic root to what looks like a sort of a soil root. There's a pretty good look at the roots growing down the coffee trunk. They will eventually hit ground level, and that's okay. Well, now we have a bit of propagation and planting on vanilla. As time goes on here, I will do some videos about the pollination of the flower and the processing of the beans. But right now, we have no beans to process. They're green, and there are no flowers. Flowers come on this vine just once a year for about a month, every year around April or May. And they only last a few hours, so you got to be right on top of them. So if this is business for you, it's tedious. It's not hard work, but it's tedious. It is highly profitable, though. And Hawaiian vanilla is probably some of the most expensive vanilla on earth if it's organically grown. So, aloha. Y'all have a wonderful day. Grow more vanilla.